Speaking of shirts that fit a little too tight, I blew the dust off this one and brought it out my closet because I figured it was fitting for this video. In this video, I want to talk about some pros and cons between emulating and playing the actual physical game on an actual system. Now, whether that's an NES all the way through to Wii U or whatever the heck, I want to talk about the differences and why I prefer emulating in some instances, but not in others. Now, me and a friend of mine, Billy, already did a big look at emulation and the reason why we emulate. And you can see the link in the description for that video, which sort of gives a different take on it to what I want to do in this video, which is more of a comparison between the two. And it also gives Billy's opinion on emulating. Now, for me personally, a big key factor in emulating and why I got into emulating in the first place was because I have a huge collection of video games at home in Australia. What I have here is actually maybe 10% of what I actually have in Australia. Now that's not bragging, a little bit it is, because I am proud of my collection in saying that I have every system that I can think of that came out in Australia, or apart from some weird ones, and then even some extras which I bought in America, but for the most part they're all the systems that I actually wanted to have, all the system I wanted to collect and play games for, and every single one was set up. I had a couple of SD TVs and then my HD TV, which was set up with a ton of retro systems. And back then, before I moved, the thought of emulating was so far out of the option for me. I needed to go and find a physical game. I needed to play that on my system. I needed to get that nostalgic feeling that either I had as a kid or I missed out on when I was a kid. But I was in a fortunate position where I could do that, where I could travel to the States and pick up the games that I wanted to play. I could pick up the games that I had when I was a kid in Australia, and I could come home, plug it into my system, and away I went. Now it's a lot less practical. For starters, I didn't bring all my systems with me when I moved. I brought very bare bones amount of systems, and I don't see a point in rebuying those systems a second time. So I don't have a Super Nintendo on me right now. I don't have one to set up. The only NES I have is a blue one down here, which was modded from a friend, or colored, I should say, from a friend, painted, but I don't actually know if it even works because I've never plugged it in. And the reason why is because I actually managed to get myself a Retron 5. Actually, the Retron 5 was a gift from a fan of my personal show, Beat 'em Ups, but I managed to get myself a Retron 5, which is the reason why I got that was so that I could emulate a lot of the physical games that I was buying while I was here. A lot of the games that I wanted to own the physicals of that I didn't already have, I could actually play them without having to rebuy all the systems a second time and then have them all set up. And that's another thing, is having them all set up. I'm moving a lot right now. I've bounced between Texas, Seattle, Canada, and even in Canada, this is the second place that I've lived in the last 7 or 8 months. So having to move all the time and having to move all these systems and move everything, and I don't know where I'm going to be month to month right now, unfortunately. My lease on this place is up on a month. That's where the Retron came in handy, but then there are games that I wanted to play, as I said, that I already have. I didn't want to rebuy the games, rebuy the systems. There's more than just the 5 systems the Retron can do. That's where I started to fall in love with emulation and where emulation came in so handy. A lot of these games that I wanted to play, that I wanted to pick up and start playing again, which I didn't want to have to buy a second time, and that's a huge advantage for me in emulation. And I will admit the fact that emulation, I can play everything on a 1080p monitor at 60 frames. I can make everything look as nice as I want it to look. Everything looks a little crisper, looks a little clearer. Having a collection of emulated games all in one folder, all in one file, or even in the same place is so nice to have from a collecting standpoint, of an organization standpoint, I should say. Having it all in one place, easy to play. And then when it comes to recording footage for my shows, for this video, for episodes, having them all there, even if I have the game here with me right now and I can plug it in and play it, it's so much easier and nicer to go and just press a button and start doing it that way. But as far as actually going and doing it, for example, if I wasn't in this position and I had all these systems set up and then I had a collection on my computer, which one would I rather sit down and play? It's always going to be the physical, and I think most people would be that way. It depends on who you are. If you're not a collector, I think most people would say that having the experience of actually sitting down with an NES controller or a Saturn controller or whatever, turning on the TV, waiting for that game to boot up, blowing in the cartridge, trying to get it to work, eventually getting it to work. There's something about that that is so much more part of the gaming experience for me, so much more a part of gaming. And I would always rather prefer that. And even if you're the kind of person that doesn't want to go out and buy all the systems and buy all the hookups, I think for the most part, a lot of us can agree that if that was a possibility for you, if you could just go and sit down and do it, and it was easy and already done for you, that would be a better gaming experience. But I know there are people that do prefer playing on their PC. They do prefer being a PC gamer, whether it's their Steam games, their current games, playing the new games that come out on their computer rather than a console. Those people, sure, they would prefer emulating, which I completely understand, and I do see that side of things. It's so much cleaner, nicer, easier to deal with, but I'm always going to prefer that physical. And I'd be interested to hear in the comment section below, do you actually prefer doing the physical or the emulated? I mean, a lot of us here, most of us here are obviously because of LaunchBox, so I have to imagine that most of us emulate video games. Most of us enjoy emulating video games. So do you prefer using the emulator, or do you prefer using a physical, actually sitting down with a system? And why do you prefer that? What are your reasonings behind that? Are they the same as mine, or are they different? Now, having said that, it does depend on the system as well. I mean, for me, the systems I grew up with, always going to prefer physical. But if it's something really clunky and cumbersome, like a Commodore 64, or if I want to try out a game I haven't tried before on a big old clunky system from the olden days, like, I don't know why I said it that way. Even the ColecoVision, for example, which I have up here right now, which you guys probably can't see, that's in the box. There's a lot of styrofoam around it. I don't really want to get it out. I've never really even set that one up specifically. Actually, when I want to play ColecoVision, I usually wait till I go to my friend's Billy's house because he has one set up with a bunch of games, and I prefer like using his than trying to get mine out. So for that, if I wanted to play a Coleco game right now and just play it for 10 minutes, I'm gonna emulate that 100%. And honestly, I'm probably gonna prefer that because I didn't have to get that thing out, set it up, clunk around with it, try and get it back in the styrofoam and put it away when I'm done, because eventually I'm gonna move and have to do that. So just may as well do it while I'm there, and that's just a whole nother thing. Now, I did touch on the Retron 5 for a little bit. I would be interested to hear what you guys think of things like the Retron 5. For me, and I don't know why, I think it depends on what TV I play it on, but even when I plug in the Super Nintendo controllers or the original NES controllers, there seems to be a lag in the input. I don't know if that's just me, if I'm imagining that, but I know me and my partner Kim, we sat down to try and play Mega Man, which Mega Man and the whole Mega Man franchise on the NES was one of her favorite games and franchises, and she's stupidly good at it. She actually had to help me beat a couple parts because I was getting so frustrated in Mega Man 3, I think, or Mega Man 2, I can't remember which one, which is sad because I think one of those is the easiest one. We were trying to play it initially on the Retron when we were at my house, and we couldn't do it. Neither of us could do it. If the controls felt slippery, there was an obvious delay. She was sucking at it, which she was like, do I suck at this game now? It's been a few years, but am I this bad? And I was trying to do it, and I was a little better at dealing with the lag than she was, but I could tell that there was something wrong there. Even when we played Super Mario, there was something a bit wrong with the input, and we went to her house the month after and played at hers, and sure enough, she was finishing the game in an hour, and I was sucking at it, but the controls felt more tight. So ever since then, I've been really hesitant to play games on the Retron because of that fact. So even emulating it in that sense, I would rather use the actual console. And even though I'm playing with actual cartridges, with my actual NES Mega Man cartridge, and it felt a little bit more real with my controller, I was just sort of bypassing having to set a system up all the time with the Retron, I would still rather emulate at that point. If it's at the point where I can't play the game, I would rather emulate it if I feel like it's not going to have the same amount of lag. But guys, I've just been thinking about emulation recently and what I prefer emulating and the games that I prefer emulating, and do I prefer it on the PC or the console, and what's worth setting a system up for. So I thought I'd get up here and talk about my pros and cons in emulating, but these are just my pros and cons. These are just my personal pros and cons. What are your guys' pros and cons? I would like to know in the comment section below if you prefer, as I said, emulating on a PC, or emulating in general, or if you prefer actually physically setting up a system and going for it and playing your heart out on the old school NES or whatever it is that you play on. So let me know in the comment section below. Remember to hit like on this video. Be subscribed if not already. Remember to check out LaunchBox. It's really cool if you do like emulating, which most of us do here. And I'll see you guys in the next video.